who's ready to wade into the magical world of Amphibia? With a team comprised of folks who worked on shows like Gravity Falls and Steven Universe, we can be well assured that this show is gonna be a good one. So sit back, relax as we cover the entirety of Amphibia from start to end. But first, the cast. Meet Anne, Sasha, and Marcy, the trio friend group that all happened upon Amphibia unbeknownst to them. Along with these humans, we also have some slimy friends. The Plantar family, consisting of Sprig, the teenage frog who becomes besties with Anne, Polly, his younger sassy sister, and Hop Pop, the boomer of Amphibia, who proves to be just as stubborn as the older population here on Earth.
No buts!
With all that done, let's get into our very first episode, Anne or Beast. There's a beast in town, and Sprig is determined to make his family proud of him by tracking it down and protecting his frog village. He eventually stumbles upon Anne, or I guess you could say stumbles or falls into a trap. He was looking for Anne in the woods and got caught up in one of these elaborate traps that she had set out for her prey. Once untied, Sprig realizes that Anne isn't some horrifying beast, but rather an incredibly ugly and unfortunate creature who is lost.
You saved me.
The two get to talking, and Sprig tells Anne his sob story about wanting to come off responsible and strong to his family and village. Right after this talk, the entire town shows up to tie up Anne and get rid of the beast, which greatly distresses her as she thinks that Sprig set her up to be killed. During the chaos, a huge praying mantis arrives, and the people of Amphibia realize that the insect has been the real beast all along. So they set up to deal with that instead. Once finished, yet another, larger and more intimidating mantis arrives. During all of this, Sprig releases Anne, and the two go off together. Hop Pop is overall proud of Sprig for not only finding the beasts, but also protecting Anne when he realized that she wasn't the beast at all.
Was some of the bravest and most responsible stuff I've ever seen.
He allows Anne to live with him so long as she stays in the basement, concluding the first episode of our grand new adventure. Anne wakes up from a crazy dream where we learn of her teleportation to Amphibia. Apparently, she stole a magical box from a thrift store, and when she opened it, she was transferred into the amphibian realm. When fully awoken, she speaks with Sprig, Hop Pop, and Polly. Sprig is ecstatic that the beast they had originally thought Anne to be in the first episode just happens to be a weird-looking girl, and he oh so desperately wants to be friends. Sprig suggests that she and him go to the lake together in order for Anne to feel less homesick, since she originally had said that one of the things that she would like to do with her old friends is to go to the beach. Hop Pop isn't too fond of this idea, and demands that the two stay inside so the other frogs in their village get used to the idea of Anne's existence.
Point is, the frogs in this town can be pretty small-minded.
Anne and Sprig don't listen, and end up stealing the keys to the front door in order to escape. Once at the lake, there appears to be a large sign that reads, "No swimming." When Anne decides to ignore this, Sprig gets worried and tells her that they should probably just leave. To which Anne tells Sprig that in order to be a good friend, she should try and get the things that Anne wants, such as going swimming in the lake.
Whatever you want, a real friend will help you get. And you know what I want? The lake!
What Anne fails to realize is that a real good friend chooses to keep their friends safe, even if that means going against their wishes, and because of this, she gets the two of them in a sticky situation. After swimming for a bit, they're attacked by a giant snake and are barely able to escape.
That explains the sign.
Once home, Hop Pop checks up on them, worried that something went astray while he was gone. Thankfully, he walks in on them playing a board game instead of anything fishy, since they had decided to come home after their snake encounter. The episode ends with us seeing one of Anne's friends from Earth being locked up in some type of dungeon. Here, we hear a scarier looking frog, a toad perhaps, telling her that she's been lying about being the only human as they found one of Anne's shoes that she had lost in the woods. This leaves the audience to wonder what evil lurks inside this new froggy world. Kane Crazy begins with us learning that Anne harbors absolutely no mannerisms and hasn't learned how to be respectful towards people either. It starts with Anne refusing to eat Hop Pop's food as she claims it to be slop. She then just makes fun of him in general in retaliation after he called her a princess.
Well, if I'm the princess, then you're the king of bad cooking.
Sprig and Polly are enjoying the entire interaction as they could never say these crazy things to Hop Pop, but they quickly lose their amusement when Anne accidentally breaks Hop Pop's cane. Apparently, his cane has been a family heirloom for like forever, and it's super important that it stay safe. Anne feels bad and decides to take Sprig and Polly on a dangerous quest in order to fix it to its original state. When home, Anne packs her things up and gets ready to leave, assuming that Hop Pop is going to kick her out for her disrespectful attitude and the harm that she caused to his personal items. But when he sees her about to leave, he tells her that it's okay for her to stay. She just needs to work on her mannerisms in order to do so.
Now put that bag down, young lady. You're not going anywhere.
Leaving the episode with everyone happy and the family growing on each other. In Stakeout, Sprig gets frustrated with Anne and Hop Pop for always arguing. The two haven't quite warmed up to each other since moving in, and the constant bickering has gotten out of control. Sprig decides to pretend that some of Hop Pop's corn got stolen and insists that Hop Pop and Anne are going to have to do a stakeout together in order to find out who the culprit is.
The only way to catch this monster is a stakeout.
The two reluctantly agree and set up camp for the night, both with their own version of an energy drink. Because of their competitive nature, they argue on whose drink is better, and then chug each other's drink to prove it if it works or not. But because of the different dimensions that the drinks are from, they have a psychedelic effect on both Anne and Hop Pop, leaving them both to hallucinate together.
Whoa! What's happening to us?
How should I know? Oh.
They get along, and then don't get along, and they get along again in order to attack the thief, who happens to be Sprig. Right before the two can do any serious damage to him, the hallucination wears off, and they learn of Sprig's lies. They aren't too upset with him, though, as his plan worked, and Hop Pop and Anne have a newfound liking of each other.
Boy, I'm tired.
Even if they still have occasional arguments now and then. Anne wakes up one day to a face full of zits, as most teenagers eventually do. She's absolutely mortified by her appearance, but nobody else seems to mind. Not only that, but when she goes into town later that day with Hop Pop, she gets praise and congratulations on her new ruby red warts.
They're warts! Beautiful ruby red warts!
Wait, huh?
In frog society, I guess red warts are super rare and cool. So cool, in fact, that she gets recognized by the mayor, who's convinced that the townspeople are going to adore him if he has Anne as his spokesperson.
You can help me improve my reputation. How does that sound?
Sounds harmless.
However, being in the limelight causes the fame to go to Anne's head, and she forgets about her adoptive frog family and friends she made along the way. It's not until her warts disappear that she realizes her true family and the help that they offer her. She ends up telling the other frogs that her warts aren't permanent.
She's hideous again.
And the mayor gets exposed for not thinking that highly of his people and calls them idiots when complaining about how he's going to get their votes without Anne being his spokesperson. The episode ends with Anne leaving her fame behind and enjoying her frog life with her frog family instead. In Girl Time, Anne attempts to grow closer to Polly after not being close in the slightest for a long time. In order to do so, she takes Polly out to do a bunch of girl stuff that Anne is used to doing at home, such as going on a shopping spree or to the spa.
We're going to a spa.
Polly isn't really used to doing any of that, and is shown having the most fun during her spit competitions with the boys or goofing off with her fellow frogs. Anne gets upset about Polly essentially ditching her during their girl time and accidentally insults her heavily, calling her gross and shaming her for enjoying the activities that she finds the most joy in.
Well, excuse me for trying to make you less of a disgusting little slob.
Distancing herself even further from Polly than she ever has before. Right after this, Anne gets caught up with legal stuff because it turns out that all of Hop Pop's money she spent is invalid. He's essentially broke. Upset with the situation, but also wanting to make it up to Hop Pop, Anne suggests that in order to give the city enough money, they must win the longest spitting award, which is made entirely of gold.
Hey, mustache! Is that trophy made out of gold?
24 karat, ma'am.
Unfortunately for Anne, her wounds hit deeper than she expected, and Polly is now too self-conscious to spit in front of other people, thinking that it's a disgusting habit, that she should act more ladylike. Anne, frustrated with herself, insists that Polly be herself and win the trophy, and is eventually successful in convincing her. The Plantars win the trophy, and are able to pay off their debts to the entire town. The episode ends with the Plantars having a small amount of gold left for themselves after all of that, carving it into the shape of Polly in her honor.
Well, I love it!
We learn of the Plantars' ancestry in this episode, with Hop Pop starting it all off by bringing up their great-grandparents and family tree. Soon after, Sprig accidentally opens up a trapped secret staircase, encasing Anne and Polly along with him.
We have to go down there! Let's do it!
They decide to go down the staircase since they can't seem to come back the way they came, and stumble upon their great-uncle's laboratory. After finding some diaries, they discover that while he was a farmer, he was also a genius scientist, even finding many different inventions while in there, including a huge white pumpkin monster. Sprig ends up protecting Polly and Anne through the power of a motherly hug. After their initial horror is dealt with, the three fall through the floor into a more dungeon-like room consisting of different jewels and trophies, then to an even deeper cavern with fun games and puzzles. Throughout all these different rooms, they're learning more and more about their plantar ancestors. Anne ends up reading about a plantar that just so happens to be a newt who wasn't actually from the family but was adopted after going on long travels with them. After realizing that Anne can technically be a newt, she gets all lovey with Sprig.
I guess even an outsider like me can be a plantar.
The three are eventually able to escape and excitedly tell Hop Pop about it, as he has no idea they existed. Anne is tired of the disrespect that she's been getting throughout the town and jumps at the possibility of fame whenever the big bad toads get in town. Sprig warns her multiple times not to get caught up with them as they're bad news. However, she doesn't listen and jumps at the opportunity of friendship.
I was thinking we could hang out with these guys a little longer.
Once recruited, she's told that the only reason they're in town is to collect taxes for the king that they never received. But the toads take it overboard, stealing people's personal items and seemingly having a really good time doing it.
Now who wants to race to the next house?
Meanwhile, Sprig spies on Anne to make sure she's safe, but in doing so notices that the mayor has been taking innocent people's tax money and keeping it all for himself. Anne confronts the toads about the missing tax money whenever they try to steal from the Plantar's house, even though she saw firsthand Hop-Pop paying his taxes. They refuse to listen to Anne, even though she's one of them, and demote her. A small fight breaks out, but the townspeople come in clutch and save Anne from the toads. The episode ends with the town getting their tax money back from the mayor, and Anne being the hero of the town.
Cheers for Anne, defender of Wartwood!
In this later episode, Anne and the other children decide to go to the bazaar, which Hop-Pop grudgingly refuses to allow them as it apparently hosts thieves and other mischief.
Hold up! From what I've heard, that bazaar is full of greedy degenerates.
The children go anyway, in hopes of finding some new information on the Calamity Box. Frustrated with the kids not listening, Hop-Pop ends up stealing the Calamity Box and bringing it under the tree on their property in order to keep it safe. This event puts a giant rift in Hop-Pop and Anne's relationship in the future, as he directly goes behind her back in order to do this. The episode begins with us finding out that Sprig somehow got himself engaged to a girl named Maddie, who just so happens to be a magic wielder and specializes in curses. Sprig is freaking out, as he doesn't want to get married, let alone date Maddie anymore, and suggests that she break it off with her, to which he agrees. Right before they break it off, they bump into Barry, and knock over all of his blueberries.
Don't worry about it! Nothing gets Barry down!
Anne ends up breaking up with Maddie for Sprig by writing her a note, and then we see a curse wielder casting something that looks quite sinister. When strange things begin happening to Anne and Sprig, the two decide to look to Maddie for the cure, but she claims to have nothing to do with the curse.
Curses can only be lifted by the caster, and this isn't my curse.
Eventually, they confront Barry, as he's the one of the only other people in town capable of cursing somebody, and they find that he did in fact curse them, and is indeed a much scarier frog than they originally thought of him. Maddie ends up saving them, leaving her and Sprig to remain friends and allies after everything that had happened between them.
Friends? Friends.
Anne gets awarded the Frog of the Year award since she's done so much for the community, and is told during the ceremony that the person who wins gets the honor of throwing the Frog of the Year party.
She don't deserve to host a party.
Party? What party?
Since being a teenage girl from Earth, Anne has big expectations for her party, more so than what the amphibians of Amphibia are expecting. She wants drama, such as Sprig confessing his love to Ivy for a romantic drama effect. Her plans don't really go well, as the frogs aren't used to partying in her style, and she considers herself a failure due to her party being a dud.
This party stinks. Some selfless frog of the year I turned out to be.
Thankfully, she's told that she did wonderfully, that nobody really cares much about how the party turns out, especially to the extent of what she was thinking. The episode ends with the frogs reassuring her that they think she does deserve the Frog of the Year award, and Ivy ends up asking Sprig out so that he never ends up having to, leaving a happy ending for everyone involved. But wait. Sasha, Anne's friend from Earth that we last saw inside of Toad's dungeon, shows up in full armor and an escort, along with a huge, scary-looking Toad army. Oh boy.
Nice to finally meet you, Anne Boonchuy.
While the frog people are understandably wary, especially Hop-Pop of Sasha and the Toad army, they are all invited to a celebration at the Toad's castle in gratitude of Anne being found, and the potential of Anne and Sasha working together to find a way home. Anne assures everybody that going to the Toad's castle will be fine, even though the two groups of amphibians have a long history of hating each other.
Sasha's been my friend since kindergarten. If she says it's fine, it's fine.
Once there, Sprig becomes especially anxious as he notices most of the toads seem on edge, and decides to go outside in order to get some fresh air. When he asks to leave, the toad guard tells him that none of the frogs are allowed to leave, that he needs to go back into the castle immediately and not tell anybody what he heard. Obviously, the toad frog doesn't know Sprig very well, because as soon as Sprig is back in the room with the other frogs, he starts screaming about their imprisonment.
We're not guests, we're prisoners!
Meanwhile, Anne and Sasha are talking and catching up when Sasha decides to tell Anne the real reason why the toads brought them all to the castle, which is to make an example out of Hop-Pop. Apparently, because of the stand he made against the toads during the tax collection and his stubborn ways in general, he's begun to make a name for himself across the frog landscape. He's essentially the face and name of a rebellion going against the Toad army. The toads brought them all to the castle in order to feed Hop-Pop to a creature in order to make an example out of him and any other person that would dare defy the toads. Anne, mortified by this, hurries back to the Plantars, only to walk in on a a riot going on involving the frog people and their capture. Later, Sasha threatens Anne with her possibility of going home and claims that in order to find out more about their journey back, she must hand over the frogs. Anne stands her ground, causing the two to have their own little sword fight in front of everybody. But instead of playing by the rules of the sword, Grim, the Toadhead commander, decides to snatch up Hop Pop and dangle him over the monster. Before any feasting can go down, the entire tower begins to collapse due to one of the frog villagers misunderstanding one of Anne's instructions earlier in the episode. Sasha ends up going overboard with Anne, catching her in the planters. They're all about to fall when Sasha decides to make the ultimate sacrifice, letting go of Anne's hand and saving her and her new family. While Sasha falls, she looks to be accepting her fate when all of a sudden Grimes saves her and steals her away, with the other toads leaving Anne to wonder if Sasha truly is evil like one of them, or if they captured Sasha rather than saved her. The episode ends with a newfound love and appreciation amongst her and the Plantar family, as they decide to try their best in figuring out how Anne can get back home.
So, you guys want to get breakfast and come up with some kind of plan to get Anne home?
The Plantars have decided to move to the big city, Newtopia, in order to talk to the king of Amphibia and hopefully find answers on how to get Anne back home. During their travels, they wander upon a small town. No, literally. And are greeted by a plethora of small frogs. Unfortunately, though, they realize that the small frogs are being bombarded by a gang of large burly frogs. Hop Pop doesn't know that it's a gang, though, and decides to stand his ground on one of them, leaving the townsfolk to praise him. His power gets to his head, and he begins boasting about all of his accomplishments, including his supposed revolutionary rebellion.
And then I lifted not one, not two, but 3 toads over my head!
That is, until the whole family of scary frogs show up to threaten him. The Plantars start to leave at first, but they end up turning around whenever Hop Pop realizes that in order to be a good person, you should fight for those who have no power to fight for themselves.
You see someone that can't fight for themselves, it's your job to fight for them.
This doesn't go well for him, since the family is much stronger than he is. When he inevitably gets knocked out after attempting to fight, all the small frogs from the town grow more vicious than they've ever been before, beating up the family and protecting Hop Pop from any further harm. Once they finished, Hop Pop asked them what changed, and they explained that his motto really struck them. If Hop Pop fought for them when they couldn't fend for themselves, then who are they to not fight for Hop Pop?
When someone can't fight for themselves, you need to fight for them.
The episode ends with the small town being safe from harm and the Plantars going on their own way, with a newfound perspective on what it means to be a hero. In Truck Stop Polly, the Plantars take Polly for granted, and after she annoys them all day by whining about how she wants to hear a fun story, they complain about her behind her back, saying that they should have just left her home if she's going to mess up their plans the whole time.
It's times like these when I wonder whether I should have left her with Mrs. Croker back home in Wardwood.
She unfortunately overhears this and is greatly hurt, and being the young, impressionable mind that she is, decides to leave the Plantars and engage in semi-dangerous activities, such as hanging out with truckers and battling giant monster birds. Meanwhile, the Plantars are very worried about where their precious Polly has gone, and they're super excited when they find her. Polly confronts them about their rude words, and they apologize profusely for saying those things about her. They also assure her that they do in fact love Polly and want her to be a part of their big adventure. The episode ends with the Plantars appreciating Polly much more so than they did before, and they all enjoy her company while they finally read her the fun story that she'd been wanting them to read. Okay, in this later episode, we learn that Sasha has been training vigorously ever since her and Anne's battle and her shameful defeat. Meanwhile, Grime has been doing nothing of the sort and has actually been wallowing in self-pity as he's been shamed by the kingdom and abandoned after his failure at making an example out of Hop Pop. Sasha urges Grime to fight with her in order to build his strength, but he moves absolutely zero muscles, even telling Sasha that she can fight her own battles.
Grime, help me take these guys down!
Nah, you got this.
Eventually, Sasha meets with 2 other toads that haven't completely abandoned Grime and asks them to go into town to get them more supplies. While at the supply store, they're approached by a different warrior who goes by the name General Yunan.
My name is General Yunan, Scourge of the Sand Wars.
She demands that they tell her where Grimes is located, but they choose to stay loyal, claiming that they don't know what she's talking about. Eventually, she gives up, but actually she just decides to spy on them from the roof to learn of Grimes' location instead of relying on persuasion. She eventually gets to Grimes' whereabouts and ends up fighting Sasha, who isn't nearly on the same level. Grimes finally decides to step in and help Sasha, reigniting his fighting spirit, and declaring that instead of helping out the toads, he wants to rule the entire world.
It's high time a toad ruled this world for a change.
Him and Sasha also end up having a heart-to-heart regarding how she's been feeling lately. She's heartbroken over losing Anne as a friend, and that the reason that she has been training so hard for Grimes is so that she doesn't lose him too. She doesn't have many friends left. This next episode takes a nod to Disney's beloved Gravity Falls. The episode includes the Plantar entering into Curiosity Hut.
I think This place is closed, so let's leave and never come back.
Let that play on words sink in there. During their visit, they get spooked by his different wax figurines and other cursed items that they are introduced to by the alternate reality Grunkle Stan, introduced to us by the name of Curator.
You can call me the Curator!
Unlike Stan, the Curator turns out to be evil, and the group must escape his sticky clutches. In the end, they manage to be free of the hut, resuming their regularly scheduled programming. What a fun Easter egg. The Plantars finally get to Newtopia, only to be told at the gates that there's absolutely no way they're getting in.
You can't come in here. Utopia's closed.
They aren't opening their doors to anybody because of the scary killer ants that keep trying to get in. The Plantars think they're full of it, until they're attacked by a swarm of ants. Go figure. Before any real harm can be done, Marcy shows up and shoots the ants down with her arrows. Her and Anne reunite, and we learn that Marcy teleported to inside the gates and is elevated in the ranks as one of Newtopia's chief warriors. Sprig is extremely wary of Marcy, as anyone would be after the last encounter with Anne's friend, Sasha. But after Marcy saves Sprig from being digested by a huge spider, the two become friends. The episode ends with Marcy asking Anne if she's caught wind of Sasha, and her learning that Anne and Sasha actually just got into a pretty heated fight.
Oh, actually, I did find Sasha. We had a fight.
Marcy doesn't seem too concerned by this because of how Sasha would always act on Earth. The two come to terms with being able to make their own decisions and be their own people without Sasha trying to control their every move. Tensions are brought to light between Anne and Marcy whenever Anne confesses to several of her friends that she feels inferior to Marcy when it comes to her smarts.
I've always just felt kind of dumb around her.
When Marcy ends up finding out how Anne feels, they have a heart-to-heart about their own jealousy for each other. Apparently, this whole time, Marcy has been jealous of Anne for being able to form connections with people, and how she seems to make friends really easily.
You get along with people so well!
After some reassurance, the two are able to work together, and Anne ends up finding out the last clue to a strange puzzle the king had sent Marcy, to bring the Plantars to him. The episode ends with the crew going to the castle in order to see what's going on. In The Plantars Check In, they're able to meet with the king and are happily surprised to meet a kind-hearted large man who's more than willing to assist Anne and Marcy with any research they may need in order to get home. Apparently, he's fascinated with humans and is wanting to be on good terms. He offers them a lavish hotel and a gold card, which can basically get them anything that they need.
Royal credit card! It will grant you access to do anything in Newtopia!
He also offers the girls full access to the royal archives so they may find any information that they can find regarding their current situation. Pretty nice guy. Wow. Skipping ahead to After the Rain. While researching for some time, Marcy and Anne discover that in order to get their magical box to work again, they must recharge the crystals embedded in the front of it. There are special temples attached to each stone that the girls must travel to in order to recharge the respected crystal associated with that temple. This later episode begins back in Wartwood with Marcy contacting Anne and letting her know that she's ready to finally approach the first temple, leaving Anne one task: to get the magical frog box. Anne asks Hop Pop where it is, and he panics and attempts to dig it up from the tree that he buried it. However, he's unable to find it.
It can't be. The music box. It's gone.
Furious, Anne automatically assumes that he's lying and flips out on him. Anne thinks that Hop Pop just doesn't want her to go, which couldn't be further from the truth. Hop Pop definitely understands how important her family and home is to her, but she's too distraught to think about things like that. Eventually, the book's whereabouts are found after a bunch of people in town mention that their items are being stolen. They're able to retrieve it, and Hop Pop ends up confessing to Anne that the reason he buried it was not to keep her, but to protect her. Whenever Sprig and Polly's parents died, he swore to always protect those close to him and to never allow another dangerous adventure.
Ever since then, I swore I'd never let my family down again.
Even in the wake of saying all of this, he shows Anne a secret family book highlighting the Calamity Box, which resembles the Frog Box, and even announces that together they can go on any adventure. Anne forgives him, happy that she has her box and a family to back her up while she goes on her own adventure. In The First Temple, Marcy shows up to the Plantars' humble abode, and they all head off to the temple together. After some mild arguing and puzzles, the group passes the test at the temple, which wasn't any of the puzzles it threw at them, but rather for Marcy to learn humility. Whenever Marcy realized the games were causing her friends physical and emotional distress, she decides to quit, even if that meant harming their chances of restoring the green gem. After she did this, they were all led to an outhouse that charged the crystal for them.
Guys, this is where we charge the stone!
It also pointed the group into the correct direction to the next temple, granting them a longer journey and more adventure ahead. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, the king is met by General Yunan, who had been trying to find Grime earlier in the show. Yunan informs the king of what's going on with the toads, including that Grime has supposedly been missing. All of a sudden, the king catches wind that Marcy was indeed successful in her mission.
Looks like they're making progress!
Causing him to abruptly leave his meeting with Yunan and head to the basement, where he's seen speaking ominously of some sort of prophecy with a large glowing eye. An evil monologue, huh?
Soon, we will have our revenge.
Anne and her crew end up going to the second temple, which appears to be on top of a large mountain. They find a guide who seems suspicious to Anne from the start, constantly trying to sabotage them and steal the box.
Didn't you see how she looked at the music box? Plus, she owns a parrot. Only bad guys own parrots.
Eventually, Anne ends up yelling at her for being weird, and they are all teleported to their own area where they continue to fight. The guide ends up falling, and Anne sacrifices her life to save her even though they barely know each other. The guide is incredibly shocked and impressed with Anne's actions, and happily agrees to charge up her crystal, stating that they've been waiting for someone like you for a long time.
We have been waiting for someone like you for such a long time.
Before the crystal can get fully charged, Anne hears her friends screaming and assumes something horrible is happening to them. She takes away her crystal and asks to be transported back to them, only to find that they were just laughing at cute animal videos. Okay? The episode ends with the audience noticing that while the blue crystal is glowing, it's flickering and unstable due to not being charged all the way through. Sasha and Grime arrive at the Toad Council, where we find that the leader just so happens to be Grime's sister. They propose a rebellion against the king, wanting to overthrow the government and rule it themselves. While the Toads are completely against the idea, they believe that there's absolutely no way that Grime and a human girl could ever be strong enough to lead and propose a quest. In order for the two to gain the Toad support, they must first collect the Warhammer guarded by a massive beast.
It is the one thing, the only thing, that will prove we should follow you.
Sasha quickly agrees to the terms, not realizing the danger that awaits her, and Grimes angrily explains to her how deadly this beast actually is. They bring along 2 other Toad soldiers who are absolutely terrified of the beast, but Sasha assures them that no harm will come, that if they even get slightly scared to let her know, they can surely turn back. Later, we find that while she was capable of getting the hammer, she not only lied to the Toads, but manipulated them after the fact, claiming that the battle wasn't that bad.
We trusted you, and you didn't care one bit about what happened to us, as long as you got what you wanted.
The 2 Toad soldiers call her out on her bluff and remove themselves from the battle, allowing her to have a glimpse of self-reflection on how she treats other people. She doesn't get the chance to truly make amends with the Toads, as Grimes separates them from Sasha and puts her back on track, focusing her on the plan rather than her personal relationships. The episode ends with Sasha and Grimes having full support of the Toad army behind them, along with the 3 temples. This next episode begins with Marcy and Anne, along with the Plantars, heading to the 3rd temple in order to finish their quest of completing the stones of the box. Once there, they end up running into Sasha and Grimes, who lie to the group and tell them that they've been on their own since the Toad Temple situation. Sasha apologizes to Anne for everything that happened, and claims that she had a lot of time to herself to think and grow into a better friend.
Everything that happened at Toad Tower was my fault.
Anne forgives her and allows her and Grimes to join them on their temple quest. Later in the episode, things start to get heated whenever Sasha points out Anne's lack of trust in her, and the two air out some much-needed conversation. Anne explains to Sasha that while she may forgive her for the Toad Temple, Sasha's been pushing her around her entire life and has manipulated and gotten whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted.
It wasn't just Toad Tower, Sasha. You've been pushing me around my whole life.
Eventually, Sasha apologizes genuinely to Anne, leaving Anne to hype her up enough to finish the temple and charge the crystal. Assuming that all the crystals are charged, Anne suggests that they go back to Earth right then and there, to which Marcy aggressively says not to open it yet, as it could be dangerous, which is obviously a cover-up for something bigger. She tells Anne and Sasha that they should take the box to the king in order to make sure that they open the portal safely, so that none of them get hurt or end up somewhere other than Earth. Anne and Sasha eventually agree, and they begin their travels. The episode ends with Grimes approaching Sasha, asking if her head is still on track for their plan, and the audience learns that her apology was fake.
Of course I haven't forgotten, and I'm pretty sure they bought my act back there.
Only done to manipulate the two to charge the box and gain their trust. This next episode consists of an extremely awkward encounter with the Plantars inviting Sasha and Grimes over for a dinner and a game night. The tension between the two groups is high, especially between Sprig and Sasha, as Sprig doesn't trust Sasha at all. Sasha ends up exploding after being reminded for like the 5th time that she tried to kill Anne's frog family and betray their friendship. She starts yelling at Anne, saying that she doesn't want to have to change in order to become a better person.
Maybe I don't want to change. Did you think about that?
She likes the way that she is, to which Anne responds that she's fine with the way that Sasha is. She doesn't want her to change. The only thing that Anne wants from Sasha is to realize that Anne has grown as a person and doesn't need someone constantly telling her what to do and taking care of her. The episode ends with a genuine heart-to-heart, one of their only genuine heart-to-hearts thus far. Eventually, the girls are able to get the box back to the king, but there just so happens to be one small issue. Sasha betrays Marcy and Anne yet again, stealing the box and claiming that now with the power of the sacred box, her and Grime plan on ruling over Amphibia. Anne loses all hope in Sasha, even after the most recent bonding time, telling Sasha that she never wants to be friends again. Because of Anne's words, Sasha decides to send her back to Earth, separating her from her frog family and banishing her from Amphibia. However, the box doesn't open the portal. Instead, Sasha sends Anne and the others to the dungeons while she figures out how to get the box to work.
Until I can figure out out how to use this thing? Guards, take them to the dungeon!
And Marcy and the Plantars are easily able to escape their prison fate whenever General Yunan arrives to rescue them. Meanwhile, Sasha does some minor digging into the box and finds evidence that the king is up to something sinister involving this box, something Anne nor Marcy know about. Wanting to figure it out and potentially stop the king, Sasha approaches Anne about her worries of something more evil than her and Grimes' innocent rule over the kingdom, but Anne refuses to listen to anything she says due to her manipulation and misguided trust in the past.
You expect me to believe you? After all the lying and manipulating you've done?
Because of this, Anne is still hell-bent on getting the box back to the king at all costs, and is even successful in doing so despite Sasha's warnings. Once back in the castle, they're about to give the king the magical box before he goes on a long tangent, revealing Anne's blinded trust in him and explaining his wish to travel to Earth along with other dimensions to take over those worlds as well.
I will not only rule over this world, but all worlds!
Suddenly, Marcy speaks up to the king, saying that this wasn't his original plan, leaving Anne and Sasha dumbfounded, as Marcy obviously knew that something evil was going on. They confront her, and she confesses that she was the one to bring them to the new world. Before Anne's birthday, Marcy learned that her father had gotten a new job offer in a different state, meaning Marcy would have to move away and leave Sasha and Anne potentially forever. Marcy did some research and discovered the magical box, thinking that she could give Anne the magic of going on infinite adventures together throughout the different dimensions with her and Sasha. She decided to send them all to Amphibia without the other two's knowledge of her plans.
I found the box. I had no idea that it would actually work, but it did!
Anne is dealing with major heartache, not only mourning the betrayal of Marcy, but also witnessing the king hold Sprig up over an open window of the castle tower, threatening to drop him if Anne did not give her the box. Because of her deep-rooted love for this kid, Marcy hands over this box, even if it means destroying Earth and every other dimension. But once in his hands, he decides to drop Sprig anyway. Marcy leaps into action, trying to catch Sprig using a giant bird creature, and Anne absolutely loses her marbles, channeling her energy via the blue crystal and producing a strange glow from her body and eyes. She transforms into her own version of a superhero, kicking the king's ass a bit before Sprig is brought back to her.
Sprig! You're alive! Oh, thank goodness.
Yep, Anne has powers. Once safely back with Anne, Marcy steals the box and opens it while the kings are distracted, allowing for Anne and the Plantars to run back to Earth. When they turn back to get Marcy to come along with them, they witness her get stabbed through the chest by the angry king.
Marcy!
The episode ends with Anne and the Plantars dropping into what appears to be Los Angeles. Also, P.S. During all the fighting that went down earlier in the episode, Polly got her legs, much to the excitement of Hop Pop and everybody else.
My little baby's got legs!
Time for the first episode of Season 3, The New Normal. During their journey, Anne mentions her belief that somehow, she thinks Marcy is okay.
She's alive, Hop Pop. She's just gotta be.
Anne and the Plantars eventually make it back to Anne's parents' house, where Anne originally planned on soft launching the whole frog family in an alternate dimension to them, but is sadly mistaken whenever the Plantars miss their cue and show up unannounced. Anne's parents aren't too scared of the Plantars, but they do plan on turning them into the police so they don't have to deal with them. Anne begs them not to, though, and they eventually give in, stating that they can stay with them for a bit, as long as they don't make it known to the world that they're there. Meaning quarantine time.
Come on, guys. Let's have some Earth-style quarantine fun!
The group quickly grows bored of being locked up in the house and begs Anne's parents to let them go to the store with them, to which they also eventually give in to their pleas and state that they can go along as long as they stick together and don't make any type of scene. Meanwhile, back in Amphibia, we're shown that the king did in fact keep Marcy alive in some type of rejuvenation tank, claiming that her job isn't done yet.
And as for you, my dear, your part is just beginning.
We also learn that the king plans on killing Anne so that she has no magical powers to stop him from taking over worlds. He doesn't like that he isn't the only one with potential power from the magical box. In order to kill her, he sends one of his robots to Earth, but the robot proves to be unsuccessful, being beaten by the Plantar and Anne easily, even while being in a public setting. Anne uses her powers in order to get rid of the robot efficiently, but passes out after doing so, explaining to the Plantars that not only does she get super tired after using them, but using the powers also just makes her feel bad in general.
Using them feels bad.
Because of this, the Plantars vow to not ask Anne to ever use her powers again, unless it's for extreme emergencies. The episode ends with Anne gaining praise from her strict parents, who've noticed a newfound maturity inside of Anne, after she proved that not only was she able to take care of herself in a new world, but protected a different family in her own world as well. This next episode dives into Sasha's point of view after what happened at the King's Tower. Sasha, along with Grime, escape from the castle, heading to the only place they know is somewhat safe, the Plantars' family home. Grimes takes refuge, but Sasha can't bring herself to bed in a home of people's lives that she ruined and sleeps in the barn instead. When they arrive at Wartwood, they tell the locals that Anne sent them there to protect them, which isn't true.
They sent us to protect you, fine frogs, in the meantime.
When in reality, they have absolutely zero intention to actually protect them, which is shitty and weird. Eventually, Sasha gets gets upset with Grime constantly trying to get her on track for their plans and expresses what she actually wants to do for the first time in the series. She wishes to actually protect the villagers of Wartwood and be the friend that deserves to have friends like Anne and Marcy. Sasha and Grime separate in order to do what they need to do. Sasha warns the villagers of the upcoming robot army that's on their way, and sooner rather than later, a battle ensues.
A robot army is on its way to destroy Wartwood.
Sasha was geared up to fight alone, but is pleasantly surprised when she finds the people of Wartwood joined her in combat, along with Grime as well, who has chosen to stick by Sasha's side through and through. Being kind seemed to finally pay off for her, as she's slowly learning how to be the person that she wants to become. The episode ends with Sasha declaring that she's planning on fighting back to the king in order to save her friends. Because of the king's robots failing to kill Anne, he decides to put a bomb in its chest, saying that if the robot is unable to kill Anne by the time the timer goes off, then the robot explodes.
Or the bomb planted in your chest will destroy you.
Because of its newfound urgency, the robot goes after Anne in front of everybody, including Anne's parents, who are extremely confused by the whole situation. They're disappointed with Anne, as they think that she must have done something really bad to be chased to this extent by a robot from another dimension. Anne gets frustrated with their continuous nagging, and yells at them about the way that they speak to her. After all of their emotions are aired out, Anne, along with her family, fight the robot, and are yet again successful, but only after Anne uses her powers. While passed out from the energy that she used, Hot Pop has a parent talk with Anne's mother about how much Anne has helped them along the way, and how they could never have survived without her. Because of this talk, Anne's parents finally come to terms with the pride that they feel towards their daughter, and decides that they will help the Plantar family with whatever they need until they get back to Amphibia. The episode ends with a weird FBI-looking agent snapping a photo of Anne and her family during the battle with the robot, and says that they must alert Mr. X.
It's time to call Mr. X.
Okay, X-Men. Clearly, we're about to see a lot of X-Men. I know what they're doing. Back in Amphibia, we're shown a peek of General Yunin, who we've met before, obviously.
Scourge of the Sand Wars, defeater of Ragnar the Wretched, the youngest...
As well as Olivia, another newt responsible for being the guardian of nature back in Amphibia. They meet up and make a plan to go against the king, as they both see him as an unfit ruler after finding out about his evil plans. In order to outsmart him, they decide to free Marcy, as she's the only one they feel capable of doing so.
We need someone clever, someone like Marcy Wu.
After successfully getting Marcy back, they catch her up to speed on their plans of fighting back to the king. On their way to conspire a plan together, they're stopped by a hologram of Olivia's mother trying to distract her by calling her a failure and pointing out how rough Amphibia's natural landscape is looking these past days. This greatly upsets Olivia, as she feels absolutely horrible for not only harming nature, but also for letting her mother down. Marcy realizes that the thing Olivia is seeing is a hologram. It's not real at all.
It's a projection, you know, like VR.
And even after getting distracted herself, she ends up fighting that evil eyes are the ones responsible for projecting such horrible visions into the girls. The three of them defeat the eyeballs together, but are interrupted by the king. He goes on a monologue about how he's actually working for something greater than himself, and that his leader needs a host and demands Marcy's body. Yunin and Olivia try to prevent it, but the king is successful in strapping down Marcy's body and injecting her veins with a strange gold syringe, allowing his leader to infiltrate her body and possess her. The episode ends with a newly taken over Marcy saying in a creepy voice, "Why hello there," to Yunin and Olivia for the very first time.
Why, hello there.
In the episode If You Give a Frog a Cookie, the Plantars get homesick, reasonably so I'd say, as they can't get back to their homeworld anytime soon. They end up guilt-tripping Anne to the point of letting them go to the science museum, where allegedly a scientist there named Dr. Freaks has been researching dimensional portals. Once there, Dr. Freaks is more than happy to show them the portal and what it shows her. However, the portal certainly doesn't go to Amphibia. Instead, it just blows up, and even blew the Plantars' human costumes off. Not good.
Were you three always giant talking frogs?
Dr. Freaks steals the Plantars, wanting to run experiments on them so that she can become famous, only to be stopped by Anne and the other scientist that was working with Dr. Freaks, since she claims that Dr. Freaks was always mean to her and also very insane. The episode ends with the new doctor telling the Plantars that she will help them build an actual portal, as she enjoys using science to help people and also thinks it would be super cool to do it.
The portal we'll build together will be more than enough to get me a grant.
In this episode, the Plantars get captured by Mr. X from the FBI, who we find was given orders to collect them and run experiments, like Area 51 type stuff. Anne and her parents team up along with some other friends to rescue them, including the scientist from the previous episode who's supposed to be helping them get back to Amphibia through the portal situation. The humans are successful in helping the Plantars escape, and are pleasantly surprised by the scientist managing to steal a generator that hopefully has enough energy to start up the portal. Unfortunately, the amount of energy they calculated was way off, and the generator is not even close to giving them the boost they need for the portal.
If that didn't work, I'm afraid
Nothing will.
Hearing this, Anne chooses to use her powers in order to give the portal its extra boost that it seems to be requiring. Luckily, Anne and the Plantars are able to squeeze through the portal in time before it short circuits and crashes. The episode ends with them witnessing the destruction and fallout of their precious world, leaving room for battle and excitement coming soon. Also, side note, Anne and her parents had a genuine talk about Anne's choices to go back to Amphibia, and her parents expressed how proud and supportive they are towards her decisions as they know she's fighting for what's important. Wow. Anne and the Plantar family get back to Amphibia and take charge of the frog army against the king after Sasha hands over the reins. Anne is somewhat confused as to why Sasha is giving her all of the power, and so is Grimes.
You gave Anne the helmet?
Yeah.
As Sasha has proven to be a wonderful leader thus far. At first, things run somewhat smoothly, but Anne quickly gets overwhelmed with the responsibilities that hang over her head. She begs Sasha to take back the leadership position, to which she refuses for unknown reasons. Anne confronts her about this whole situation, yelling at her to just take it back, which leads to Sasha finally confessing.
Because the last time I was in charge, I ruined our friendship.
The last time she was in charge with Anne around, she ruined their friendship. And the last time she was in charge of their little friend group, Sasha realizes that she was more of a totalitarian leader. She doesn't want to be like that anymore. Anne assures her that she's choosing to put her trust in Sasha from now on, that it's okay as long as they work through their conflicts in a more healthy way. In the episode Old Town Road, kinda dated title, Sasha is wondering what on earth her and their little frog group are going to do in regards to their next plan with fighting back the king. Anne and Hop Pop remember a weird message that they found back on Earth that seemed to be in amphibian writing. They pull it up, and it reads something along the lines of, "Go find Mother Olm. She will lead you to your destiny." Although cryptic, the group decides to head to the only area where they know of Olm's existence, which just so happens to be the deadly Winter Mountains. Great.
Hey, that wasn't there before.
They find a two-headed Olm that reluctantly leads the group to where all the Olms live. They meet with what appears to be a sassy guardian who commands them to leave, and claims that Olms don't bother themselves with other species' business. However, it becomes apparent that the king is messing with them, as they suffer continuous earthquakes. Because of the Olm's stubborn nature, they refuse to hear any of it, and proclaim that the earthquakes are nothing more than common, that they will be fine so long as they stay in their own area and do their own thing.
These natural tremors are nothing more than common earthquakes.
The group goes back to the surface to try and stop the drill themselves, the thing that's causing the earthquakes, but are only successful because of the twin Olms sacrificing themselves to stop the drill from further penetration and destruction. They all fall back to the Guardian's area, and yet she still somehow manages to deny them access. Sasha gets fed up and yells at her in front of many of her followers, saying that she's one of the dumbest creatures that she's ever met, that if she wants to kill herself along with all of her followers due to her incompetence, then so be it. The Guardian takes a liking to Sasha, as apparently she hasn't been contradicted that thoroughly in about 500 years.
I haven't been yelled at like that for about 500 years, and it kind of shook me up.
She grants access to Mother Olm and allows the twin Olms to come back into the city so that they may live in their home where they wish to reside. When the group eventually makes it to Mother Olm, they find that there is a prophecy surrounding the magical frog box. Apparently, the gems are meant to be scattered, as they're powerful in their own way, but can be used for great evil. Those who have tried to use it to conquer have birthed a great evil which Mother Olm called the unnatural thing, but we know it as the core, which we've seen previously and have witnessed get injected into Marcy. The three girls are said to determine the fate of Amphibia and save the amphibians from the greater evil that lives within all of them. They were also told that Sasha and Marcy should also have powers like Anne's, but they're currently locked in the box, along with their respective gems.
Yes, honey, you should all get cool anime powers.
In order to unlock the girls' full potential, they must retrieve the box. We learn the backstory behind the king and the core in this episode. It all started after the king noticed a ripped-up painting of people we can't make out when a flashback begins. When the king was a young boy, his father gave him access to the magical box, granting him rule over the kingdom. Apparently, back when it was quite common for the people of Amphibia to run expeditions to other planets in order to gain resources.
You must exterminate the savages there so that we can mine their planet for its resources.
The king had two best friends, one named Leaf, who saw a horrid vision after touching the stones on the box. She warned the king of what she saw, but his father called treason on her and warned the king of her betrayal towards the throne.
Now we know the gardener is a traitor.
The king didn't quite believe his father, as she was his best friend, but after she decided to steal his key in order to take the box, he swore against her. Leaf believed that in order for Amphibia to remain a safe place, the box must never be used again, and so she fled, choosing to take it to the Olms instead. When the flashback ends, the king speaks to the core, saying that it's been 1,000 years since then, and that he's ready to go to Earth. The episode ends with a message from his father through the core, assuming that the core absorbed his essence just like all their previous ancestors. He says, "I'm almost proud of you." Turns out the king isn't evil, he's just got daddy issues. In order to actually fight the king, Anne and Sasha decide to get the three main species of amphibia working together: the toads, the frogs, and the newts. Apparently, in their history, the three groups have almost never gotten along, but in order to be the strongest, they must join all the forces that they can. Unfortunately for Anne, she's unable to undo centuries worth of strife between the groups, causing her to have a miniature mental breakdown as she doesn't know what else to do. After the leaders of the three groups witness Anne's frustration, they decide to try a little harder to get along, proving that they can work together. The episode ends with Mother All making another appearance with dire information for Anne. Apparently, the king plans on traveling to Earth much sooner than they had imagined, meaning that they have to go to the battle tonight. We then see all three species working together to get ready. Anne and Sasha begin their journey along with their army to the castle. On their way, they have a heart-to-heart discussing what they're going to do about Marcy and her betrayal. Both are ready to forgive and move on, as they understand her reasoning, even if it's a bit morbid and strange.
We ignored all her interests. We might have ignored her needs too.
Once there, the two armies battle with Anne, Sasha, and the Plantars sneaking into the castle with hopes of finding the box and rescuing Marcy. They're caught in a fight with Commander Yunin and Olivia, who seem to be controlled by the glowing necklaces around their necks. They're eventually able to break them, releasing the two from their trance. Yunin and Olivia warn the girls of their changed friend, but they don't think anything of it, entering in to see Marcy as the core for the first time.
Hello, girls.
Upon entering the room that Marcy's supposed to be in, Sasha and Anne grab for the box, but they're fooled by a hologram. The core then introduces themselves to the girls, who are frightened and worried about where Marcy must be. The core assures them that she's still up there somehow.
She's up here with us.
That according to Marcy's memories, they don't seem to be that close of friends based on how the three used to treat each other. This gets into Sasha's head, as she knows she's the one to blame for most of their past issues. After getting past this, the two command the core to give Marcy back, but the core is stubborn, announcing that they're going to travel to Earth, but first, they're going to kill Anne. In a last-ditch effort to save herself, Anne points out the possibility that killing her could potentially damage the box forever, as part of the energy resides in her.
What if killing me somehow extinguishes the box's power altogether? Poof!
Because of this, she granted herself some time, as the core is unsure whether or not what she says could be true. The episode ends with them making one massive portal to Earth with all of their ships, and even the castle entering through. Clearly, the amphibians are unaware of the crazy amounts of firepower that the Earth has residing on it, but that's beside the point. The Earth invasion has begun, and it's shown that in Anne's absence, her parents have won over the government and have been working with Mr. X on training in preparation for a potential war. Anne and her friends pile into Mr. X's van equipped with her parents' new high-tech machinery. They're eventually stopped in the city, where a particularly large amount of fighting is taking place, involving the monster that killed Sprig and Polly's parents. A sad Hop Pop explains that one night he found their village completely ransacked and destroyed by this beast, and he'd shown up slightly too late to help save the parents. With this story in mind, the group begins their fight against the invasion. Meanwhile, we're shown the first peek of Marcy within the core's mind, where she has vague memories of how she got there, but is distracted by a huge library of information and a whole world of knowledge to explore. She's greeted by the king's father, who explains that she's the first human to ever be let into the core.
You'll be the first human to join our ranks.
That it's an incredible honor. Back on Earth, no trace of the real Marcy remains, and an excited core watches on as the Earth begins its defamation. The group of rebels hatch a plan to go against the core and celebrate with a hoorah, with an obvious reference to Mabel from Gravity Falls, as the creator of Amphibia also as the director on Gravity Falls.
And save Gravity Falls!
The king eventually challenges Anne to a battle one-on-one.
It's time for a rematch!
Claiming that in order to end the war, she must defeat him. However, if he defeats her, then he will continue to take over the entire world. During Anne and the king's fight, Sasha is shown fighting with Darcy, Dark Marcy, which is what she likes to call herself. Inside the core, Marcy finally realizes that she's in some sort of twisted illusion after a fake version of Sasha and Anne claim to like everything that she likes, which is something Marcy knows is false. She confronts the king's father about her suspicions and demands that she will not be going along with being trapped inside the core forever, to which she is sentenced to eternal darkness, having only the photo of her friends as company. Back in the battle, Sprig and Mr. X uncover a secret letter written from Leaf to the king, saying that she always loved him as a friend despite everything that happened between them. This completely defeats the king as he throws a wailing temper tantrum. He doesn't think anything can be done by now, and he's already caused so much heartache and destruction.
Things I've done, the pain I've caused, there's no going back!
Back in the castle, while Darcy is distracted, Sasha slashes the connection between the core and the rest of its machine, causing the core to presumably shut down for good. Suddenly, Anne regains a large burst of her powers and is able to stab through the king's armor, defeating him for good and witnessing the force field around the castle go down. After Anne makes her way back up to the castle, she finds Sasha and a newly revived Marcy safe and sound. fully separated from the core. The episode ends with the group happily going back to Amphibia to announce their victory, only to be greeted by a huge red planet-looking contraption heading towards Amphibia. The very last episode begins with the king explaining to everybody that the core has a last-minute plan set in place that involves sending the core that was attached to the moon into Amphibia's core, wiping out all life on Amphibia and also claiming the stones as his own for good, as nobody would be left to stop him.
It seems the core has activated its final gambit.
Mother Ulm informs the girls that because they have the box, they're able to undo the gem's charged energy and regain the full potential of their powers. After we finally get to see Sasha and Marcy's new looks, the groups head off to punch that loon in their big ugly face, as Anne likes to say.
Let's go punch that loon in its big ugly face.
While fighting parts of the core, the king, down back on Earth, finally stands up to his father, squishing his crown and commanding his robots to engage in helping Anne, Sasha, and Marcy push back the threatening core from reaching Amphibia. The girls quickly realize that pushing away the core won't be enough, and Anne offers to take all 3 of the stones, which could potentially mean her death.
I may die in the process, but at least you and everyone else will be safe.
Even though her friends insist that there must be a different way, Anne doesn't hear any of it and ends up getting them regardless of their protests, sending them back to Earth. Sprig doesn't believe what Anne's about to do and goes up to the moon in order to beg her to come back, but it's too late, and Anne wouldn't have changed her mind anyway. Using the power of the 3 stones, Anne obliterates the core and floats back down to Earth, barely a shell of a human. While dying in Sprig's arms, she evaporates into leaves and floats off into the sky. Anne wakes up in a strange place with hundreds of stars and a calm-looking house. Once inside, Anne is greeted by an ancient guardian who was in charge of creating the stones in the first place.
I created the stones to see how mortals would handle unlimited power.
The guardian asks Anne if she'd be willing to take over their position since she's the only human in history to ever use the stones for something other than evil. Anne respectfully declines, saying that she's a whole life to live and making mistakes and to grow from them. Also pointing out that a 13-year-old shouldn't be responsible for the universe, as she would surely mess everything up and kill everybody.
I'd probably blow up the multiverse if you put me in charge.
Because of her wise words, the guardian decides to send Anne back to Earth and tells her to finish out her life, hoping that one day in her future, she will agree to be the guardian when she feels as though she actually deserves it. Once back in Amphibia, the girls find 3 shards of the stones. Realizing that it's their last option to go home, they say sad goodbyes to those who love them most. The episode ends with the audience being able to see what everybody is up to several years down the line. Polly and Sprig happy in Amphibia celebrating Anne's bravery. Marcy visiting Sasha and Anne working at what appears to be a zoo specializing in amphibians. How very fitting. And that is the entirety of Amphibia. Thank you all so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. Oh, and don't forget to comment whether or not you would have personally stayed in Amphibia forever instead of coming back to Earth. I hope you all have a great day. See ya.